What's going on, everybody? My name is Brindley. This is the Games We Play podcast, where I, your host, break down the biggest news, scores, and events from all the games and sports that we love to play and watch. If you like this channel, if you like this episode, go ahead and give the other ones a shot and subscribe, share it with your friends, all that kind of stuff. And first off, I would just like to apologize for the lack of an upload last week. I was in town visiting family and friends. I was out of town, actually, visiting family and friends. And I brought all my computer and the microphone and headphones and all this stuff, but I forgot the cord to plug my microphone into my computer to record. So that's on me. That's my bad. To make up for it, you guys will be getting additional content. I'll get into that later in the episode, so stay tuned. But other than that, it's going to be a pretty quick episode. I got homework to do, and I work the next few days, so I really got to use my time wisely. So let's just go ahead and knock this episode out. We're actually going to start this week with picks. So last week, I made my picks in the discussions tab on my YouTube page, and it wasn't the best week for your boy. I didn't do super well. First off, I'd like to clarify an error that I made. I, for some reason, put that the Packers played the Bears on Thursday Night Football. They didn't. They played the Eagles. So I knew they played the Eagles. I think I just typed the wrong name. It didn't affect the pick. I picked the wrong team in the end. So there you go. I would have still picked the Packers, just in case you're wondering. But overall, yeah, bad week for your boy. Went 7-8, so losing record. And I believe that's the worst so far. I think I went 8-8 for week 1, and I've done pretty well the other 2 weeks, but week 4 was just a wash for me. Maybe it's because I didn't get to actually talk it out. I'm going to use that as my excuse, but in reality, it's probably just that I had bad intel and I picked the wrong teams. But this week, we're correcting it because we're still sitting pretty. Record of 27-17 over the year. And this week, I think this is going to be my most solid week yet. So let's get into it. Lightning round to start off. Let's go ahead. I think the Seahawks will beat the Rams. The Eagles will beat the Jets. The Panthers will beat the Jaguars. The Giants will beat the Vikings. The Texans will beat the Falcons. The Saints will beat the Bucks. The Bills will beat the Titans. The Bengals will beat the Cardinals. The Patriots will beat the Redskins. The Ravens will beat the Steelers. The Bears will beat the Raiders. The Chargers will beat the Broncos. The Cowboys will beat the Packers. The Chiefs will beat the Colts. And the Browns will beat the 49ers on Monday Night Football. So the two games that I want to break down are the Seahawks versus the Rams and the Packers versus the Cowboys. Let's start off with the Seahawks versus the Rams. Before I get into this segment, I would just like to disclose the fact that I grew up a Seattle Seahawks fan. I am still a Seattle Seahawks fan. And just to get that out of the way, I think that I am still an objective person when looking at this game, especially when I'm running this podcast. But you should probably just know that just for disclosure's sake. So, this Rams team, it's important to note, they've had the Seahawks number for really the last 2 years. They've won their last 3 matchups against the Seahawks in resounding fashion, in fact. Even as, as good as both teams have been, as consistently good as both teams have been over the last year and a half or so, even if they're both on an upswing, the Rams just totally get the Seahawks and they just destroy them. I've watched the games. Even if it doesn't look like a blowout on paper looking at the score, it's not even close. It's never close in those games. So why is that? Well, mainly Todd Gurley has just been unsolvable by Pete Carroll and the Seahawks defense. He has been an absolute monster, not only rushing the football, but catching passes out of the backfield. He's been basically, I don't know how, because Pete Carroll is usually really, really good at finding really good players on another offense and eliminating them from the equation. But he just hasn't been able to do so with Todd Gurley, which is surprising because he sees him so much. But here's where we get into this week's matchup. Todd Gurley has not had a very good season in 2019 so far. I would say he's been super disappointing. A lot of people are saying that he's damaged goods and that the Rams are in trouble because they paid him so much. I would tend to agree because I never was really on the Todd Gurley bandwagon to begin with. Maybe that is some saltiness from him destroying the Seahawks all the time. But I've also said that Todd Gurley is a great running back. Absolutely. But I just don't feel like he puts a team over the top. And I think that's evidenced by the Rams needing so many additions to their offense and their defense in order to make that playoff run last year. But here's where the game gets tricky. Divisional games are always interesting, especially in the NFC West for the most part, unless you're playing the Cardinals. But, that's a whole nother can of worms, basically. Almost always, though, even if it's a blowout, there's interesting things that happen in NFC West matchups. And this game is super important for both teams. Both teams are 3-1. Both teams are in contention for winning the NFC West with the San Francisco 49ers. And important to note, the 49ers have a key game this week. They play the Cleveland Browns, and that's a losable game for San Francisco. So a win by one of these teams could put them in position to overtake the lead for the NFC West. And another thing that's important about this game is Seattle's home field advantage has not really manifested this year. Watching the games, normally we hear about the 12th man. We hear about how CenturyLink is one of the toughest places to play in football. It still is. But I'm starting to think that people are figuring out how to deal with it. Their first win of the year was in week 1 at home against the Cincinnati Bengals, who look terrible since that game. I maintain that they looked really good in that game, and I don't know what I can attribute that to. John Ross was an absolute monster. His game caused me to pick him up in fantasy, which unfortunately he's out, or I think he's out for the next 2 weeks now, but he did very well for me. And that Cincinnati Bengals offense, Andy Dalton has not looked god-awful. That Cincinnati Bengals team is just not good overall. There's a couple standout players. AJ Green is not back, and he's probably going to get traded. But they didn't look resounding in that win. They squeaked by. They needed help. And then they lost to the Saints at home, to a backup quarterback, to Teddy Bridgewater, who, let's be honest, let's not act like he's just a complete scrub. Dude can play. But it's still a loss at home. And that Saints squad, I think, overall is gelling better than the LA Rams are this year. But I'm not going to sit here and act like it's a world and a half difference. Seattle has actually looked better on the road, which is surprising from my point of view, knowing the Seattle team for many years and knowing how home field advantage has been so important to the success of this team. And overall, I don't know what to expect out of this game. I have my prediction, and I think that two or three important things are going to factor. First, like we talked about, Todd Gurley has not been efficient and has not been effective this year. He has a degenerative knee problem. And people are saying, well, they're saving him for the playoffs. But I would pump the brakes on that. They might have him full go this game because it's a division game. This could potentially set up for being a tiebreaker. Because you want to win your matchups. If you win your road matchup against Seattle, you're almost, I would say you're pretty certain to win your home matchup, knowing Seattle's history. But then again, on the road, they're better this year. But let's just say history is to be a factor. The Rams usually win their matchup at home against Seattle. You win that road matchup against Seattle, that's 2-0 against a team that is vying for the division title. That puts you in pretty good position. So the Rams might be like, let's hold off on Gurley for other games. But this game is super important. I think he will be full go, and I think he will be used effectively this game. This might be his breakout game of the season because you kind of got to. You just lost a game in embarrassing fashion to the Buccaneers, who almost everybody unanimously agrees is not at your level and should not have been in that game, let alone have won that game. So that's the first thing. I think that Todd Gurley is going to be the biggest key for the Rams. Second biggest key for the Rams. This Seahawks secondary is absolutely exposable. With your receiving core that you have and Jared Goff being as solid as he is, this secondary is not great. This is not the Legion of Boom. They're gone. Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman, they're gone. You got young people in the secondary. They're learning, and they've shown it. They've shown that they can be exposed all year. I've seen it. They're young. They make mistakes. They play with a lot of heart, but they're not as smart as the old guard was. And they can definitely be exposed by good receivers, which obviously the Rams have. But in order for that to happen, you need to get Todd Gurley going, because then you'll get a safety to bite. You'll get corners trying to cheat. And then you can really expose the Seattle team. If you try, if you don't take advantage of that, that front seven is great. I think they are actually able to solve Gurley, and here's why. Jadeveon Clowney is going to be a huge key in this game, and so is Ziggy Ansah. Two big pieces for Seattle. And Jadeveon Clowney is somebody that the Rams have not faced at the same repetition as a guy like Michael Bennett was before he left. A guy like Frank Clark was before he left. So they don't have all that experience playing against them. The coaching staff doesn't have all that experience playing against these guys. So there's not as much that they probably know just from facing them twice a year. Jadeveon Clowney's a new addition to the Seahawks this year. I think that he will be a standout performer in this game. I think that the Rams' offensive line has shown that it can be shaky this year. So that front seven is going to be absolutely key for Seattle. And I think the Seahawks are going to win the game because of that. Because the Rams, I don't think the Rams have something that Seattle hasn't seen this year. And in fact, if Gurley is playing at a worse level overall, that makes this matchup much easier for Seattle. And they have much less to worry about because he is the massive amount. He's just the biggest thing they have to worry about normally. And if he is not as much of a factor, they can focus their efforts on attacking and exposing that offensive line, making sure that their corners and their safeties are able to cover these high-level receivers. And of course, I never doubt the leadership and the skill of Bobby Wagner. I think he is one of the best players I have seen in my lifetime. He is already an NFL Hall of Famer in my books. And that kind of leadership is not nothing. Especially when you have a young team. A guy like that, I'm sure each week that that secondary will get better and better because a guy like that being the leader of your defense, you want to play at a higher level for a guy like that. So I'm picking the Seahawks. I think it's going to be really close. I think it's a field goal separating the two. And I think it's going to be a really good game tonight, and I'm very excited for it. And before we move on to breaking down the Packers and the Cowboys, I want to talk about the piece of content that I'm going to be making for you guys this week. I missed the podcast last week, as I talked about earlier in the show. So to make it up to you guys, I actually researched and wrote a script about the history of Vontaze Burfict in the NFL and in college and his lead up to the NFL. It's a wild journey. I think it's going to be a really fun episode. It's going to be a different kind of format from this. It's going to be a much shorter video. And it's a lot more scripted. It's a lot more edited. I'm really excited to put it out. I should be recording it later today, and it should be coming out by around Saturday or Sunday. I want to talk really briefly about his suspension. I delve into it a lot more in the video, but I want to just talk quickly about it. So Vontaze Burfict has been suspended for the rest of the 2019 season by the NFL. He had a let's just call it what it is, a dirty hit on Colts tight end Jack Doyle. Helmet to helmet. Very clearly intentional. Helmet to helmet contact, obvious violation of the rule. And with Vontaze Burfict's history, the league just said we're done. We're sick of it. You're done for the season. Now, a lot of people on the Raiders are upset. Notice that a lot of people outside of the Raiders organization aren't exactly coming to his defense. But we'll talk about that more in the video. Expect that on Saturday or Sunday. And yeah, I'm really excited to put that out for you guys. So for the final segment of the show today, I'm going to break down the Packers and the Cowboys game. This is a huge game for both teams. Just like the Seahawks and Rams game that I talked about earlier, this is a big game for both teams. Like the Seahawks and the Rams, both of these teams are 3-1. They are, and unlike the other matchup, they're both coming off losses. Their first losses of the season. Packers lost on Thursday Night Football to the Eagles in not an embarrassing fashion, but kind of a surprising fashion. I certainly had them as a winner. And let's just break down each team coming into this game. Let's start with the Packers. At the beginning of the year, the Packers squeaked by on that first game of the 2019 NFL season. The offense didn't look great, but the defense looked spectacular. And Aaron Rodgers, after the game, was asked about, struggling offense, and he said, "We got a defense. It's all that matters. We got a defense." And they looked pretty solid, but they've kind of deteriorated a little bit since then. Is that kind of attributed to teams not taking the preseason seriously? I've seen that posited. I think that that's a real factor. I don't think that the Packers have a terrible defense by any means. I think it's a pretty solid defense. I don't think it's one of the best in the NFL. But here's the thing with the Packers. I'm more worried about their offense than their defense. The obvious reason to worry is that their best receiver, Davante Adams, is not playing in this game. He's out. He's hurt. And that's not the only thing I'm worried about. When I was delving into researching to see what this matchup was going to look like statistically, I went and I looked up, because I've heard from multiple people, because I haven't gotten to sit down and really watch a Packers game in detail. I watched a little bit of film for this. But when people say that the Packers are really bad in the fourth quarter on offense, they're 31st in the NFL in fourth quarter scoring. The end of the game on Thursday last week was almost inexcusable from a play calling standpoint, from a decision making standpoint. They looked sloppy. They looked inept almost. And that Philly defense isn't terrible, but not bad enough to where you can get away with sloppy play calling and uninspired play calling. And I think that Aaron Rodgers should have tried to do a little bit more and tried to improv a little bit more, because he's a smart enough guy and he's a skilled enough guy to know that some of the play designs on that were not going to work. And I don't care if you get in trouble. I don't care if people call you selfish if it doesn't work. I myself have been very critical of Aaron Rodgers. Not on this show. I haven't had a chance to. But anybody that knows me knows that I've been very critical of Aaron Rodgers. I think the guy is supremely talented. I think that he is one of the smartest quarterbacks in the NFL. I've mainly criticized his leadership and his frankly, his excuse making. And this game is kind of primed for excuse making if Davante Adams is in there. He loves throwing to Davante Adams. This isn't just a case of this is his favorite target, but he's got other guys. He loves Davante Adams. Tries to get him the ball as much as possible. I saw it in week 1, trying to force feed Davante Adams multiple times when the Bears had him absolutely clamped down. So that's not good. And here's another bad stat for the Green Bay Packers that I don't hear as many people talk about. On third down conversion percentage. So when they get to third down, the amount of times they convert to a first down on third. 32%. Roughly 1 out of 3 times. 27th in the NFL. That is not a recipe for success. You don't want to be on third and long situations, but when you get any third down, you want to convert. That is demoralizing for opposing defenses. That is galvanizing for your offense, and they're not doing it consistently. Now, what can that be attributed to? On third down, from my experience playing the game of football and watching the game of football, if you're in third and long, you would ideally like a play that is going to take advantage of teams playing a little more conservatively than aggressively. If it's third and short, do something that is just straight up going to demoralize the defense. If it's third and 1, get some we get some like dinky little route that's going to be like, really? You got away with that? Or just run it up the gut and demoralize that front seven. Now, with Devontae Adams out on third down, that makes it worse. Now defenses don't have to be like, okay, you don't have to double cover Devontae Adams anymore. Okay, we can leave that guy alone. Or he's not even in this game. He's on the sideline. That's going to make it way tougher for them on third down. That's going to make it way tougher for them in the fourth quarter because Aaron Rodgers is most likely going to have to improv because this Cowboys defense is decent. They've got some playmakers. So that's going to be rough for the Cowboys. For the Packers. As for the Cowboys, coming off a loss to the Saints in a very boring game. Sorry, it's just funny. It was horrendously boring. And their offense didn't look great. Dak didn't look great, and he looked pretty good in weeks 1 through 3. He didn't look terrible, I don't think. But they definitely didn't look great. And their thing is, they're not very good in the fourth quarter scoring either. They're 25th. It's better than the Packers, but I mean, like, it's not that much better. Cowboys got to take advantage of Ezekiel Elliott, I think. Michael Gallup is back. That's great for the Cowboys. That will alleviate some of the struggles that Amari Cooper had last week, I believe. I'm picking the Cowboys to win this game mostly because I think the Packers are going to struggle, namely without Devontae Adams, especially in the areas they're already bad at. Third down conversion percentage and fourth quarter scoring. But either way, regardless, I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a touchdown separates the two, not a field goal like Seahawks-Rams. But obviously I've been wrong before. I've been wrong 17 times before this season. So that's actually going to do it for this week of the Games We Play podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. If you guys enjoyed this episode, share it with your friends, give it a like, subscribe to my channel. Again, that Vontaze Burfict video should be coming out this weekend around. And once again, just thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I know this is a small channel. I really want to grow it, and I'm really proud of it. So thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your week. Let's hope that I win some games, and I'll be back next week.